We're right in the thick of it with our 2-year-old who's been having tantrums, and just today, oh my gosh, it was a big one.
Welcome to Late Night Notes, the parenting podcast that answers the questions keeping you up at night. I'm your host, journalist, author, and mum of 4, Madeleine Grummet. Tonight, we're talking toddler tantrums. Why do toddlers have them? And what's really going on? That's what we'll be unpacking with our after hours expert and help your toddler and you get through them calmly, because tantrums can be tough for everyone. But first, let's have a listen to our late night note.
Hi, I'm Basil. I'm just leaving you a note because it's been one of those days. We're right in the thick of it with our 2-year-old who's been having tantrums, and just today, oh my gosh, it was a big one. We were at our local playgroup and she had this meltdown because another kid wanted the toy she was playing with, and I mean, like really kicking and screaming, and I try to stay calm, but on the inside, I just feel so uncomfortable and, to be honest, kind of embarrassed, especially when it's in front of friends and family. Like the other day, we were trying to leave my sister's house, and it's not like they've said anything, but I feel like they're judging my parenting and my kids' behavior. So I guess I'm looking for some tantrum help for both of us, really.
Toddler tantrums. We've all seen them happen, and we all experience them as parents or anyone looking after kids. Tonight, I'm joined by Dr. Dani Bayo. She's a paediatrician with over 20 years of experience helping kids and their families at leading centres like the Royal Children's Hospital in Melbourne and the Children's Private Medical Group. Welcome, Dani.
Lovely to be here. Thanks, Mads.
And luckily for us, one of Dani's areas of interest is kids' development and behaviour, which leads us to toddler tantrums. So, Dani, we've just heard from Basil. Why are tantrums so common in the toddler years?
It's so interesting, but most children are still at the very infancy of their development, and that's social, emotional, physical, and language. And so sometimes there's this mismatch between them, and they're developing at different stages. So there's a real range in terms of age when these can occur. They're very typical of normal childhood development, and they're a way for children to express these big emotions that they haven't yet fully understood. And it's really just a way for them to express these big sensations that they don't have names for, that they don't have the vocabulary to describe, and that might be anger, frustration, or pure boredom, and they just don't know what to do with it. And it's just a way for them to be able to express these before they learn how to manage them and how to communicate them. And so it's really our job as parents to support them as they learn about these emotions.
And Dani, what does a toddler tantrum actually look like?
Look, there's a real range in terms of what you might see in your child, and that could be as simple as them going off to a corner and having a really big sulk, to crying, to having a real verbal outburst, so lots of yelling, screaming. They can be physical, whether that's hitting, kicking, punching, sometimes biting even, and throwing things, and it can last a really long time. But it's a really normal, typical part of childhood development. They're just learning how to express these really big emotions, and it can be a whole lot for a little person.
So we understand what a tantrum can look like. What are some of the common triggers for a tantrum in a toddler?
Many things similar to what might bring us to feel a little bit overwhelmed. So whether that's tiredness or hunger, stress, worry, fear, there are a multitude of reasons, and it's our job to help children unpack that and really understand themselves and why they're experiencing these frustrations.
And what about things like if you are at a playgroup or in a park or at your sister's house and your toddler has a tantrum? In the moment, how do you sort of comfort and reassure your toddler? What are some of your tips for what you do right in the eye of the storm, let's call it?
First and foremost, it's so important to stay calm yourself, because you're laying the foundations for them to learn this way of self-regulation. And so if you can be calm, that will help them understand that this is not a more stressful situation. You don't need to add extra layers to it. And you take them to a quiet place if that's possible. Sometimes it's not.
Or just move them away from
the eye
people
of the
if you
storm.
can.
That's
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
And getting down to their level, I think, is really, really important. And looking them in the eye, some gentle touch can be really affirming, a hug or a hand on their shoulder, and really acknowledging this emotion and that it is a stressful time for them, to enable them to understand that you see them and you hear them, and using some phrases that might be comforting for them. I understand that you're angry, and this is where we help label this emotion so that they can learn to identify it. But then also starting to model how we respond to that. So I understand you're angry, but we're out and we need to calm. So taking them through some steps, either breathing, some physical expression is okay, stomping your feet, and then acknowledging that they've managed it well. So once you get that little moment where they calm even a little bit, because sometimes it takes time for them to fully calm, but you start to see that they've ridden the crest and they're over the crest. And then once they've calmed further, giving them a hug, well done, let's get back to what we were doing, to bring them back and say, this is safe and I'm supporting you, I'm helping you through this, and we can do this together until you learn to do it yourself.
Obviously, Basil in the late night note talked about feeling quite frustrated, judged by other parents. We know that's a really common feeling. I remember that feeling. And managing your own feelings as a parent is a big part of this, isn't it? Because you're the adult. And so what's some advice you might have for parents about how they can actually manage their own feelings and be kind to themselves?
This can be one of the hardest parts of managing tantrums, but really coming back to that philosophy of, if I'm calm, then that really helps my child to stay calm. So taking a few breaths, counting backwards, whatever it takes for you to ground yourself and be there for your child, because what you're ideally doing is showing them a safe space to be able to express their emotions, but also be able to manage and respond in a calm way.
Almost modelling behaviour so that your toddler understands what it looks like to manage your emotions and be calm and regulate yourself.
And also not to induce or create any feelings of shame around them actually expressing this emotion. It's okay to cry, it's okay to be upset, but this is how we manage it and this is how we respond accordingly. And we can actually work through this will pass, and then we can get back to the important business.
And if it doesn't pass, just say the tantrums are happening a lot or they're they go for a long time, when should a parent seek help?
If you feel that this is outside the realms of typical childhood development, particularly if they're, say, 4 or 5 and they're still not able to self-regulate, if they're really prolonged, we're talking some children can have tantrums that last, 30, 60 minutes, even beyond. And I think when it's starting to impact on the family and you're starting to change the way you do things because of how your child's behaving, for example, not taking them to the park because you know that the park is a trigger for them to have a meltdown, and you're avoiding that because it's just all too much for the family, when it's impacting on siblings, when it's impacting on your child or your own mental health. I think it's really important. Also, when you feel like you're overwhelmed and you're starting to sense aggression or potentially that you might hurt yourself or your child, that's a really worrying time, and that's when you need to reach out to a loved one or your GP, your maternal health nurse, and seek some support.
Of course, and as parents, you're learning and your toddler is learning, and looking after your own wellbeing benefits both of you, of course. So thank you so much for sharing so many great practical tips and insights on how to manage toddler tantrums. I'm sure they'll be very useful for many parents out there.
It's been a great conversation. Thanks so much for having me.
We've covered a lot in this episode, so let's recap what we've learned about toddler tantrums. Toddlers are just starting to understand what emotions are. They've still got lots of growing up to do before they learn to calm down from big feelings without having a tantrum. And when tantrums do happen, because they will, focus on staying close and calmly helping your toddler to get through those big feelings. And finally, remember to be kind to yourself and seek help if you're starting to feel overwhelmed by tantrums. As always, we've got plenty of handy links in the show notes so you can find out more about tantrums, plus where you can get support. Check out our other episodes for more deep dives into those big parenting questions. And tonight, I hope you can rest a little easier.